me okay now?
Your volume's still a little low there, Brian.
Okay, so you're good to go ahead, Councillor Ritma.
Okay, well, thank you. And thank you for everybody joining us here today. It's been a long time since we've done this. So and things have changed considerably, especially for the college, but I think also for the neighborhood around the college, and certainly for all of the students that are at the college as well. So we'll do some talking about that later on, and just see how that affects what we do as well. I thought maybe the very first thing that we should do, since we have at least one new person with us, we should do some introductions. And Tammy, do you know whether the a representative from the police is going to join us, or do we know?
One of them was supposed to.
Right.
I know one had canceled out.
Okay, they may join us later then.
Yes,
And And I see we have one more trying to connect.
Yeah, Judy.
Yeah, is she having trouble?
I'm not sure. She must be.
All right. Okay, well, let's get started anyway. And maybe what I'll do is I'll just ask people to just quickly introduce themselves a minute so that everybody knows everybody. And I'll just start from who I see on my screen. And that's first one is Ryan.
My name is Ryan Carbo. I'm chair of Barrie East End Households Association, and I am the vice chair of Town and Gown.
Jeff.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Sharp, Supervisor of Traffic Operations. Essentially, I'm responsible for traffic safety throughout the city, speed cushions, traffic calming, pedestrian safety, school safety, all that wonderful stuff.
Great. Rob.
Hi, everyone. Rob Meyer. I'm a member of BHA and a member of the committee.
Jake.
Hi, everybody. My name's Jake. I am a tutoring advisor at Georgian College.
All right. Kelly.
Good morning, everyone. It's Kelly Watson. I'm the business manager in the international department, and part of my portfolio oversees the housing coordinator for international students, Kenta Shirakura, who's currently on vacation and couldn't join us today. Pleasure to meet everybody.
Thomas.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Wiersbaum. I'm a planner with the City of Barrie in the Development Services Department, and I'm just a guest today, and I'm not a member of the committee.
All right, Brian.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Brian Muscat, and I am the Dean of Students at Georgian, so I oversee all of our student services and work closely with Claire on a lot of our town gown issues.
All right, Carrie Clark.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carrie Clark. I'm the Assistant Deputy Chief of Fire Prevention and Public Education for the city.
Okay. And last but not least, Michael.
Morning, everybody. My name is Michael Gallagher. I'm a zoning officer in the city's Development Services Department.
All right. And I'm Claire Reitman. I'm the counselor in Ward 1. So the first item on our agenda today is the presentation about the new draft official plan. And Thomas is going to do that for us. So Thomas, the floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me well. I'm going to start my presentation first off just by sharing my screen here. So just give me a moment. Screen one and share. There we go. And I will also be jumping out of this screen to show you a video on YouTube. So there may be just some faffing about with jumping between screens, but I'll try to make this as smooth as possible. So, like I said, my name is Thomas Risma, and I'm here to talk to you about the official plan for the City of Barrie, draft new official plan. Let's go to next slide here. There we go. So here's an outline of my presentation today. I'm going to talk to you about the journey of how we got to our draft official plan that we have today. I'm going to give you a really brief overview of the official plan itself, as well as the urban design guidelines. And the bulk of my presentation is actually going to focus on the community structure proposed in the official plan, as well as the land use designations. And then I'm going to talk about the path forward that we have for official plan consultation, as well as next steps for this committee. I have a recommendation, and then hopefully we'll have a Q&A and a discussion as well. Okay, so when we started this official plan project in 2018, we made a couple of commitments to ourselves and broadly to the community as well. First off, we wanted to make sure that we develop a transformative official plan, one that reflects the kind of city we want Barrie to be. We also committed to unparalleled community engagement with internal, external stakeholders, the public, as broad as the net as we could cast. We also wanted to commit to a holistic approach that is reflected in clear policies that provide clarity and certainty and direction. We also wanted to make sure we have clear growth goals. So we established a 20-year growth goals in the official plan to reflect what Barrie needs in terms of growth management and wants. And we also wanted to establish a high standard for urban design for Barrie, as we're going to see lots of development in Barrie for the next 30 years. Okay, excuse me. So first of all, I just wanted to quickly talk about why an official plan is important. Well, being a planner and working in the Development Services Division, we think it's one of the most important documents in the City of Barrie because it is a policy document that governs the use of land within a municipality. And every municipality in Ontario has their own official plan. So the first full draft of the new official plan, as well as the urban design guidelines, were actually released on September 24th, 2020. So we're right now in the middle, about 1/3 through a 90-day engagement period, where we're meeting with our internal stakeholders, such as this committee, our different departments, as well as external stakeholders such as school boards, housing providers, and other community groups. Okay, so it's really kind of difficult to distill what an official plan is and what it's saying, in a short presentation. It's a 250-page document, so we try to use a picture as it seems to illustrate 1,000 words. And what you're seeing here is an image of something that illustrates the approach to our official plan. The official plan is really centered around the notion that all matters related to city planning and community planning are interrelated and codependent. So the image shows central to the official plan is the idea that we're planning for Barrie to be a more urban and complete city. This idea of planning Barrie as an urban and complete city came through a community consultation, as well as the other themes that you see on this screen, being attractive city, connected and mobile city, waterfront and green, prosperous, cultural, and resilient. Each one of these themes has its own chapter in the official plan, and it also has policies that outline how Barrie will be planned to be an attractive city, a prosperous city, and so on. Each chapter is also accompanied by a map to illustrate how and where the policies of the official plan apply. There are three sort of notable features or takeaways that I want to really highlight to the committee. Number one is, and I hope is apparent by now, that we've tried really to take a holistic approach to planning in Barrie. This is why the official plan is titled One City, One Vision, One Plan. This model really summarizes a comprehensive approach, an integrated approach, and really a planning philosophy that we've tried to enshrine in every policy of the official plan. This means we're no longer really focusing on planning on specific areas of the city. Rather, we're planning Barrie for the type of city we want. Number two, the OP really focuses down on breaking down the segregation of uses, allowing for a mix of use almost everywhere. And number 3, DOP really establishes what we think is a clear community structure. One will be that will be the foundation of the of growth for Barrie to 2041 and beyond. This will provide clarity and certainty to residents, businesses, and the development industry, and will allow Barrie to grow into a place that feels grown up, that feels urbanized, yet livable and attractive. Sorry, folks, I'm just getting some feedback here. Just one second. Okay, just adjust something here. Apologies. Okay, next screen. So here we go. So I'm actually going to show you a really quick video that we did. This video is pre-COVID. It was actually supposed to be a series of videos that we wanted to put together to highlight each theme of the official plan. So this video is actually for the Urban and Complete City, and I'm going to play that now. So this is where I'm going to jump between screens. So just one second. Hopefully this works. And this video is posted on Building Barrie, our engagement platform. And I don't hear anything. Amy, can you hear? I'm not sure if I'm allowed to share sound as well. This is not working apparently. Well, I'm not gonna take everybody's time. This doesn't seem to be working, so I'm gonna close that. So the video is working, it just doesn't seem like there's any sound. So if you're interested and you have a couple of minutes, it's just 4 minutes long. It is on buildingbarrie.ca. And it's actually right under the City of Barrie official plan page. So let me go to Building Barrie and show you actually where to go. So this is Building Barrie itself. The first tile you'll see is the city's new official plan. Click on that. And the video is right here on the right-hand side. So apologies for that. I thought it would work for us, but unfortunately it did not. So we'll go to the next slide. So in that video, we have a couple of people, residents in the city of Barrie that are of the city of Barrie that talk about their vision, their idea for the city of Barrie. And a lot of that is reflected in the official plan as well as in our urban design guidelines. So this is essentially, again, another 250-page document that speaks to, that establishes a high standard for urban design for a development in the city of Barrie. And we wanted to make sure that we have a comprehensive urban design document, as we recognize that the city is going to undergo a significant transformation over the next 20 to 30 years as it urbanizes. We wanted to take advantage of that transformation to make sure that the city of Barrie has high quality streetscapes, high quality public spaces, and buildings that establish sort of a modern, energetic, and prosperous image for the city that both the community and the council wish for Barrie to portray. So this first ever citywide urban design guidelines has actually consolidated a number of documents that focus on certain parts of the city. So now it's all contained in one place. It's one-stop shop type thing. And it's based on a number of key principles. And I'll just go through them quickly and tell you what they mean. So design excellence. And what we mean by that is really prioritizing people, strengthening public spaces and their function in everyday life, elevating the standards of sustainability and resilience, celebrating local culture, identity, and place. And then we have human scale. So what do we mean by human scale? It means designing the city for the human experience. It means designing compact, complete, and connected communities, having a diverse built form and a vibrant public realm. We also wanted to make sure that urban design guidelines speak to sustainability resiliency and adaptation. This means the city would be able to withstand climate volatility and bounce back from a catastrophic event should we have one, such as a tornado or hurricane or something like that. It also means designing a city where everybody can find a place to live in dignity and where buildings can be repurposed over time to adapt to socioeconomic change. Number 4 is diversity, equity, and inclusivity. This means designing a city that is for everyone. This is done through community-led design processes and engagement. Means planning for a diversity of densities, uses, open spaces, and affordability. Essentially, we want to make sure we plan for that housing continuum. We also want to plan for accessibility and universal design. And accessibility sort of has twofold meaning. It has, accessibility in terms of ramps to get to a second floor of a building, but also it is accessibility to things like transit, to things such as healthy food, healthy, nutritious food. And lastly, we wanted to make sure that we have policies that speak to contextual design, ensuring that there's compatibility between new and old or existing neighborhoods, as well as neighborhoods that are higher density and neighborhoods that are low density. So what does the efficient plan really mean to Georgian College? I think there is actually a two-part answer to this question. Number one is that Georgian College is proposed to be a key element in Barrie's community structure. Number two, we are creating a specific land use designation for the lands around Georgian College as well as RVH. And it's a little bit wider, and I'll show you a few maps to explain what I mean. So here's the first map, and what you're seeing on the screen here is a map in our official plan, our draft official plan of the community structure. And as I mentioned, Georgian College is identified as a key element of this community structure. And let me just show you where Georgian College is. Everybody knows where it is, but it's right about here. So let me just go through this map really quickly. So the strategic growth areas are the colors are the yellow colors or burnt orange that you see. There's a number of them. We also have our natural heritage system and open spaces, which is the green. We have our employment areas, which is the purple. In employment areas, we mean the type of sort of industrial office-y type of things, places. We have our urban growth center, which is the yellow right by the waterfront in the downtown. And we have major transit station areas, which are basically areas around the two GO stations that we have in Barrie, being Allendale and South Barrie GO. And again, so Georgian College is proposed to be within one of these strategic growth areas, which is a key element to our community structure. And this community structure is really intended to be a blueprint for growth for 2041 and beyond. And it identifies the critical elements of what Barrie needs to be a complete and urban city. And so I'm going to focus in on specifically strategic growth areas, as this is directly related to Georgian College. So strategic growth areas are areas where we anticipate the greatest mix of uses, the highest densities, and the greatest amount of change that we are expecting to occur. You'll note there's a couple of things in the official plan that is different than the current one. First of all, Duckworth Street is no longer identified as an intensification corridor. Rather, we only have Yonge Street, Essa Road, and part of Dunlop, and then Bayfield. Those are the only intensification corridors. This is because we're purposefully focusing intensification to certain areas of the city. Another thing you'll notice is that the growth node that's currently identified in the official plan around Grove and Duckworth has also been removed. And the area that's south of the strategic growth area, the white lands, is basically supposed to be existing neighborhoods. We're not forecasting a lot of growth going in those lands. So let's dive a little bit deeper here and talk about how we're going to go about realizing the vision for Barrie as illustrated in that community structure map. So to realize this vision, we actually developed a unique land use designation for all the lands within sort of the Georgian College RVH strategic growth area. So you'll note that the strategic growth area actually extends around, west along Bell Farm Road, north along St. Vincent, and then east along Cundles. And it actually picks up some employment lanes that are adjacent to the highway. And this designation is called Strategic Employment and Economic District. And that's SEED for short. So I'm just going to call it SEED from now on because it's a bit of a mouthful to say. And as you realize, there is a bit of a pun, and it's very much intended here. But before I get into the SEED designation, I want to take a step back quickly and talk about land use designations just a little bit more broadly. So land use designations are the functional components of an official plan, and they outline the role of particular areas of a city. Each color on the map denotes a specific land use type. So you have the blue, you have the red, and the yellow is the neighborhood area. That's sort of the existing neighborhoods. And what you see here on this map is an intentional attempt to actually flatten and simplify our land use designations in the official plan, because we found that we have lots of repetition, and we could make it a little simpler. And the other thing is that we're making mixed use the status quo. There's very few areas in the city where we're proposing sort of single use. So going back to the SEED designation, the SEED designation is identified by the salmon color that you see on the screen. And it encompasses the Georgian College RVH strategic growth area. You'll note that Georgian College is no longer identified specifically as institutional. We changed the meaning sort of the word institutional, and we now refer to it as sort of smaller scale uses such as schools, churches, and long-term care homes. And we actually don't even use the word institutional anymore. We actually call it community hub. Community hubs are those schools, are those churches, long-term care homes where people gather, throughout the year, or different times of the year to celebrate, to gather. And those are actually identified in the blue on your screen here. We changed the land use designation for Georgian College as we think that these uses are more than just institutional uses. We see them as regional employment centers, regional education centers that attract talent, create jobs both directly and indirectly, and specifically in the case of Georgian College, support a competitive rental market. So while there are other employment-oriented uses, land use designations, in the official plan, such as the commercial district, which is the red, or employment areas, which is the purple, which I showed before, those have a specific function, but SEED is a unique designation because it is applied to areas of the city where there's either an existing cluster of core employment uses or where we envision such a cluster to develop. So there's 3 other areas where we use this designation. We use it around, actually along the Dunlop Street corridor between the urban growth center and the highway. And then we also have a small piece of land that's just north of Park Place, where we envision such a cluster developing as well. So let's talk about what we mean by core employment uses for a second here. And to us, core employment uses are those that are part of the knowledge-based economy. That's a really, really broad term. The creative economy as well, another broad term, as well as education, health, and bioscience sectors. So sectors that are already well established in Barrie. The SEED designation is also inherently mixed use, and it allows for employment uses as well as residential uses. But to make sure that we protect these lands for employment uses, we actually require that employment uses be established on the site or on those lands before a residential site can be introduced. This is to make sure that residential uses do not displace employment uses. So in summary, we really envisioned lands with the SEED designation to become our own, Googleplexes that will continue to attract people, jobs to Barrie over the long term, as well as help continue to diversify Barrie's economy. So what are the next steps for us? What is the path forward? Well, we're currently a third of the way through a 90-day consultation. We are moving towards an open house in the spring of 2021, and then a statutory public meeting. And then we hope that the official plan will be adopted in fall 2021, September, October. And then after that point, we'll actually be putting a package together, and we're going to be sending that package, their official plan, to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for approval. And once that's approved by the ministry, the OP will be in full force and effect. And in the background, we're actually starting to work on the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw, sort of like the urban design guidelines, are an implementation tool of the official plan. So the official plan sort of establishes the high-level vision for the city, and then we implement tools to use the word again, implement the vision described in the official plan. So there's a couple of things I want to mention in terms of next steps and further engagement. I already talked about Buildingberry. There's more than just videos on buildingberry.ca. There's polls, there's windows where you can actually submit comments. There's live Q&As that I monitor weekly, and we post answers on the webpage weekly. We'll be posting more videos. Some videos will be addressing the Q&As, the questions that come through the public. If it's a complex question that needs a little bit more than a paragraph of an answer, we'll actually have a roundtable where planners will be sitting around and discussing those questions and answering them. And we'll also have an announcement around World Town Planning Day, which is November 8th, regarding a contest, so keep your eyes peeled. And in terms of sort of action items for this committee, well, I have a recommendation, if I could be so bold to make one, is that the committee assigns a member or members to review the draft official plan to determine if you want to provide any comments. The comments should also be sort of accepted by the committee and submitted to myself or Kathy Suggett or Michelle in writing. We sort of have to be sticky that way, that comments have to be in writing, but that's the way we have to do it. So that would be my recommendation to the committee. And I know the documents are fairly large, and there's lots of reading there. So what I can do is I can go through the official plan and sort of highlight the sections that may impact Georgian College and send those to the committee for review. But again, Georgian College is more than just an institution, right? It needs a number of elements to come together. There needs to be housing. There needs to be places for people to shop, to buy food. There needs to be, they need to be able to get around and things like that. So there's lots of interrelated elements. So while I can give you a list of sections that speak to Georgian College or may have an impact on Georgian College, it's really all interrelated. So I would argue for, or would recommend that the committee, looks at the official plan sort of holistically, all in one, and then provide us some comments. And that's it for me in terms of presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Thomas. Any questions for Thomas? Great presentation, by the way. Thanks very much. Anybody got any questions?
I don't have any immediate questions. I have been reviewing the OP for another committee that I'm a part of. So if there is somebody else from this committee who wants to also sort of take a look at it together, I'm certainly willing, because I'm reading it anyway.
Yeah, I'd certainly be interested in that, Rob. And I was just going to say, I like views to what's been done in the past segments of the city. Interested in taking a better look at.
Brian, I don't know what's going on, but it's very difficult to hear what you're saying.
Can't hear me?
Yeah, it's kind of breaking up all the way along. The wonders of technology. Let's see if we'll come back to Brian when he gets hooked up again. Anybody else? Any comments, questions for Thomas? Any thoughts?
Hi, it's Kelly. Just wanted to say,
Yeah.
Thomas, I think I really appreciated your presentation. I'm really happy to see the language around diversity, equity, and inclusion included in this, because I think that's, certainly an area of focus, at least for our team, that we would love to support and appreciate.
Thank you.
Thomas, I think that's a great comment, Kelly, and I think that's it's kind of novel actually in an official plan, so it's very on point, I think, for where we are today. One of the thoughts that I was having, Thomas, is that you didn't say very much about the community right around Georgian College. What does the official plan or your draft official plan say about that?
Well, it sort of depends. So I guess the area immediately south of Georgian College, that area is identified to be neighborhood area, and it's recognized sort of as an established existing neighborhood where we don't anticipate a whole lot of high density sort of development and things like that. The official plan actually intentionally restricts height in certain areas, specifically in the neighborhood area. If you're on a local road, the highest you're going to go is 3 stories. And most single detached homes, if you put a 3-story building next to them, it's almost, it depends how you build it, how tall the roof is. They're almost indistinguishable. And the only way you can get sort of some additional height is if you're on a specific type of road and only under specific conditions. So again, the official plan intentionally focuses sort of intensification towards certain areas, being the strategic growth areas. But it does permit a wider range of uses inside those neighborhood areas. So while they are established residential neighborhoods, the official plan would allow for introduction of small-scale commercial retail uses in those neighborhoods to allow those neighborhoods to become a little bit more walkable, so people don't have to drive everywhere to buy groceries, for example. And also, it depends on which neighborhood you're in. There's some areas that are identified as historic neighborhoods, and there's some additional policies for those areas as well.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, Judy, go ahead.
Super. Thank you for your presentation, and it's very exciting to hear the strategic planning towards the college area. And along with Kelly, I'm also excited about the diversity, equity, and inclusion pillar. And I'm curious to know what your plans are to inform that pillar, specifically around Georgian College.
That's a very good question. The official plan, what it does is, it has a lot of language that speaks to facilitating a lot of things to happen. It doesn't necessarily say there's only, and specifically around like protecting natural heritage and things like that, there's a lot of shall and will and things like that. But in terms of housing, there's, which I think is where your question is getting at, we're talking about, planning for a wide range of housing types, going from, tiny homes to, and using innovative forms of housing to different, co-op housing and things like that. So the official plan is very permissive in terms of allowing different types of residential uses and a mix of uses. And it's really the urban design guidelines that talk about how to design those buildings to make sure that they are built to be inclusive and accessible. Does that answer your question?
Yes, in part, actually. And I appreciate that, those plans. I'm also interested in you had commented before about the representing the culture or cultural aspects of neighborhoods, and also, I don't know if it's mobility, but the ability to get around, and how you're going to inform that planning, and what kind of inclusion you're looking to have from residents in the area, the college community, students themselves.
So, okay, so let's just go talk about the, I guess, the mobility aspect first. In terms of mobility, the official plan requires essentially that any new development is transit supportive. So those neighborhood area lands that I showed you, that yellow colored, any development happening there has to be at a transit friendly density. So 50 units per hectare as a minimum, and 60 units per hectare, where you're adjacent to certain type of roads. So that's how we're trying to make sure that neighborhoods that are, that were not built originally to be transit friendly, because that concept wasn't around in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Those auto-dominated neighborhoods, we wanted to allow them to transition over time, and they will transition to be more dense, but dense in a way that doesn't detract from their character, but just makes them a little bit more livable, so that people can get around. Because there's going to be a lot more people living in Barrie in the next 30 years. There's going to be 150,000 of us, more of us in Barrie. And if everybody's driving, it's unsustainable. So we needed to think of policies that we could put in place that that allow people to have more mobility options. And densities is just one of them. We do have in Chapter 7 of our official plan. Sorry, is it Chapter 7 or is it Chapter? Sorry, I think it's Chapter 3 that speaks to. Sorry, it's Chapter 4, planning a connected and mobile city. There's lots of policies in there about transit-friendly densities, and making sure that we plan for active transportation. We also have a map that shows sort of the ultimate build-out of our active transportation network and what we're striving for. And
that includes cycling too?
Yes, active transportation, it includes cycling, it includes micro-mobility options. So what we mean by that is, you're seeing a lot of people not necessarily cycling, but they're using electric scooters, they're using electrified bicycles, they're using electrified hoverboards or skateboards or longboards. People are using electrified unicycles. So you're seeing the democratization of mobility, basically. More and more people have access to these mobility types. So what we mean by active transportation, it includes all of that. It includes walking, cycling, actually using your body to power the bicycle, and then other forms of mobility as well. So we do identify that there's some on-road cycling network, and we also identified an off-road cycling, but it's more just off-road trails that anybody can use. And that's in I think it's in map 4. We've changed the order of these maps, so just gonna make sure I'm quoting this correctly. Map 2 is land use designations. Map 4, mobility network. And you asked another question about inclusivity and about cultural identity and things like that. So Chapter 8 of our
I wanted to expand on that. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to expand on that. Previously, we talked about how well used one park is for, say, cricket tournaments, and reflecting the cultural, as in international cultural diversity and racial diversity in neighborhoods. And as it's growing, how people like to gather in spaces, and if there's been any thought around that kind of inclusion, or if there can be.
That's an excellent question. And so the official plan, and again, what it does is it regulates land use. What it says is, can these areas of the city be used for this and that? It's not intended to be sort of a cultural planning exercise. We do have a cultural heritage strategy, which does talk about specifically about protecting the city's cultural heritage and celebrating heritage. So that is in that document. But the official plan, what it does is it lays the foundation of the ability to use our parks, the ability to use our public spaces for exactly those types of events. So we introduced 2 new concepts in the official plan. First being celebration spaces, and the second one being gathering spaces. So celebration spaces are planned to be, they're planned to support a wide range of activities, sort of a larger scale, being your Rib Fests, being your concerts, being your sort of community theater productions and things like that. we wanted to identify which spaces of the city we think that's appropriate. And we've identified on that in a map in our official plan. I think that is also map 8. Let me just confirm that before. And I don't actually have all my maps printed, but I believe it's a cultural city map, and I believe it's map 8 in our official plan. And then we also have gathering spaces. These are smaller parks, smaller open spaces where we see, smaller gatherings occurring, not necessarily concerts and things like that, but, community or neighborhood picnic, or, if somebody wants to take pictures for their wedding or host a wedding, that's where they'd be able to do that. And I'm not talking about like the dinner and everything, but like just do the actual ceremony. You could do it there. So that's what the OP does. It sort of lays out the broad permissions for how we can use public spaces in the city of Barrie to support those types of events, but it doesn't necessarily speak to planning those events. And it's just not in our wheelhouse. That's not what an official plan can do.
Okay, thank you. I realize I've given you a bit of a grilling here unexpectedly,
okay.
So that was really interesting and insightful. I'm looking forward to follow up.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Now, Brian, you're back online. Is your technology working enough for you to talk to us?
Let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, yay. Sorry, I live in the country and our internet is not the greatest, so I keep getting warnings that I'm losing connectivity. So sorry about that earlier. So just a couple quick comments on it. One, I'd love to take a look at the plan and happy to provide some feedback and comments on that. The other comment I had is just, I really like the approach that's being taken of the holistic view of the entire city as opposed to segment it, which is what seemed to happen in the past. So just congratulations to those, Thomas, yourself, and others that have worked on it, because it's certainly, I think, moving us in the right direction to see how everything is interconnected, and appreciate the comments around the diversity, equity, inclusion of the city and how we can help improve some of that. So I'll happily take a look at that and provide some comments back. I'm assuming, Claire, you'd like them all to come through you, and then we'll discuss at a future meeting. Would that be the way?
Yeah, I think so. My idea is that what we would do is appoint, say, 2 or 3 people to, I don't know, put a bit of a document together to review, and then have that on our agenda for next month, just to have a discussion about it, and then pass it on to Thomas. All right. Any more comments, questions for Thomas?
Maybe just a quick question. In what ways will the OP help to encourage more development of affordable housing? I mean, I think especially when we think about the international students and the students that are going to college, affordability is a huge aspect, and I'm just curious, like, what are the tools that the OP can provide?
That's an excellent question, Rob. Housing affordability is a big component in our official plan. And specifically in urban design guidelines, we actually talk about planning for the housing continuum, planning for a diverse range of housing types. And that in our land use policies, in specific land use designations, we actually say what type of built form is supposed to be used in that land use designation. And that is to introduce affordability and as well as increase densities. And I believe in our urban growth center specifically, we actually have a high target for affordable housing. I think it's actually 35% of all.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, exactly. You've been reading. So we're consulting with the community to see what the community thinks about that target, what council thinks about that target. Where we may have the option of using inclusionary zoning specifically around our major transit station areas, but those areas are a little bit further away from Georgian College. So we might look at some policy specifically for the strategic growth areas for increased affordable housing. I think citywide the goal is 10%. and 35 within the urban growth center. But we can certainly have some discussions around having some policies for more affordable housing around around Georgian College, or at least more. Affordable housing has a very specific definition for planners. So if not specifically affordable housing in terms of the definition of that planners use, just more types of affordable housing types, as well as attainable housing as well.
So just a quick follow-up. So like, for example, if there was an opportunity to encourage somebody to include affordable units, can the city perhaps like lower the parking requirement or eliminate the cash in lieu of green space as long as they're providing an affordable unit for a set period of time? Like, are those things that are available or could be part of this?
Well, we currently have a community improvement plan that does help fund affordable housing. We have a community, actually don't have one yet, but there is a community benefits bylaw that we're going to have to work on and implement very soon, actually, because there's been changes to the Planning Act, and those changes have sort of changed a little bit how municipalities can fund affordable housing. But that is something we're looking into. Parking, for example, certainly that's something that's in our purview. We could do that. I'm not entirely sure if we can discount, cash in lieu for green space and things like that. But we're looking into options to increasing affordability, as you mentioned, or actually reducing costs for the developers so they can provide more affordable housing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts? I have one, just following up on that one. I think my comment would be it's not so easy it's easy to talk about affordable housing. It's not so easy to actually deliver it and make it affordable in the long term. And that may mean that we as a city have to be far more involved in that in order to make that happen. One thing that just sort of flows out of that, and your question sort of twigged me to it. One of the issues that we have around the college is on occasion we have houses that are just overcrowded in terms of student accommodation, and not only students, others as well. And that's a concern for the college, is a concern for the community. And does the OP say anything, or your draft OP say anything about that?
I don't think the official plan would speak to that specifically. I think that's something we would try to implement through the zoning bylaw. We have to be careful about occupancy and tenure in sort of planning documents, because we are limited in terms of what we can do. But what we can do is make it easier for developers to provide student housing elsewhere, to sort of spread it out a little bit. Because I know in the past we've had a lot of concentrations around Georgian College, because it's a desirable neighborhood because you're close to Georgian College. But North Barrie Crossing is new. There's a new plaza there. There's lots of opportunity. There's AT connections. There's lots of land where there's intensification. There's neighborhoods that are in transition. So what we'd like to see is basically a bit of a spread of those student housing, so you don't have these pockets. But in terms of regulating how many people live in a home, that's very challenging to do through planning legislation. I would almost defer more to Michael to that to speak to, because I know that he's worked on that in the past. And maybe we can look at some opportunities. If there is any tools that a municipality has we can implement through the official plan, we can certainly explore that.
Okay. Any other comments, questions for Thomas, and before we let him go?
Not necessarily towards Thomas, but I'd also like to join Brian in having the opportunity to review the OP as well and offering my comments in regards to it as well.
Perfect. And I think we have a subcommittee starting to form right here already. That's great. Okay, well, Thomas, seeing that there's no other questions, thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll let you be off to your next meeting, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you very much, committee.
All right.
Take care.
I have, I guess we have a bit of another, an agenda as well. One of the things that I thought we might start off with is sort of, Brian, if you wouldn't mind kind of giving the rest of the committee sort of the, where's Georgian College at, what's happening, how have you managed through COVID, will you be continuing on, and that kind of thing. So if that would help to give us a bit of a context.
Sure. So hopefully you can hear me again. We have gone with primarily a remote delivery model for all our academic classes. The exception, of course, are those hands-on components where students need to be on campus to complete lab work, work on engineering equipment, etc. So we have about 30% of our classes are on site. The remaining 70% are remote. And so some of our programs right now are 100% remote. Others will be a mix of remote and some limited on-campus activity. So we've been able to try and manage COVID that way in terms of our enrollment numbers. We are down about 9% over last year. And that seems to be trending as we move toward our winter semester. We do have a reduction in the number of international students. Right now, there's a sort of a hold, if you will, for the winter semester as we are waiting for plan approval from the ministry and then from the federal government. We have to be on a list of what we're calling designated learning institutions, or DLIs, where we've had to submit an entire plan of how we would deal with anyone coming into the country to ensure they meet the quarantine regulations. So we're providing housing for those students and residents. Our residents on the Barrie campus, we kept the population of it down, so our occupancy is about 42%, and we're using roughly 105, 110 suites for any incoming students to be able to complete their quarantine, as well if we should have any kind of outbreak within the residence. We've kept the floor empty to be able to start moving people into that to manage any kind of spread of COVID. So we've been working very closely with public health on all of those plans. Our plan for the winter semester is to carry on exactly as we do in the fall. So it will again be primarily remote with some on-campus activity. The percentage will shift some, will be more around the 40% on-campus, 60% remote delivery. As we then move into the summer semester, we're making some contingency plans, but our assumption is we'll run the same as we've done fall, winter. We're also looking at whether we're going to need to suspend intake on some programs, because then we run into a real challenge of once we get through COVID, we may not be able to handle then the numbers on campus in terms of classrooms and in particular labs when we get into programs like dental hygiene and nursing, where there is very limited space and run capacity now. So that's kind of the broad picture of it. So essentially it is primarily remote delivery with limited on-campus activity. And through COVID, we've just eliminated any parking fees for our students. They still have to register their plate, so that we make sure they're the only ones parking on campus. And we're providing RVH with some parking spaces as well.
All right. Any questions or comments for Brian? How are your international student numbers? Are they up or down, or have they changed at all?
I'll look to Kelly as our international staff member here.
Yeah, sure, Brian. I'm glad to help. We actually did surpass our enrollment numbers by about 110 students. We had about 700 students engage in the fall semester, but only 200 of those students required in-person classes. So the majority of our students are studying remotely in their home countries and being supported remotely. We are expecting, so the ministry has made a little bit of a shift, as Brian mentioned. We're working on a COVID readiness plan because previous to this announcement, any student who had a visa prior to March 18th was eligible to come into the country, but then after that, it was a dead stop on issuing visas and allowing access to students coming into the country. So the more progressive we get on the intakes, the more students that weren't eligible to come into Canada. So what the ministry has done now is they've allowed us to they're going to open up the international borders once we have an approved COVID readiness plan in place. And that will essentially put us back to in regular enrollment and I use that kind of hyphenated because it all then will become the student's choice of whether they want to come to Canada. As Brian mentioned, we are continuing to operate remotely with a majority of our programs. So the students certainly don't have to come to Canada. We anticipate that some will from certain countries, especially those that are countries that are struggling with COVID right now. So it'll be an interesting, we from an enrollment perspective, we're really all right now looking through a glass ball, trying to fortune tell what's going to happen. But we do think there'll be an increase of students coming on into Canadian land because of this new ministry approval and the allowing the access for the students to jump over and come into Canada. So we can certainly report back to you after the intake what that trend has looked like, because this is all going to be new for us. And I think from that point on, it'll be consistent as we move forward.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Brian. Any comments, thoughts, questions? Great. Okay. Let me just circle back to our previous conversation about the official plan. I think I got volunteers, Rob, Ryan, and Brian, to review the official plan through the lens of what Town and Gown would have to say about it. Is that good with you three folks? And does anybody else want to jump in on it? No? Okay. All right. Can we ask you three to kind of organize yourself and then figure out, and then have something for this committee to chew on at our next meeting? Is that reasonable? Got nods all around? Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Let's do a bit of a round table and see if there's anything that is pressing or burning in anybody's minds at this point. Maybe I can start with Michael Gallagher.
I don't really have a lot of comments. I'll just kind of mention that things are pretty steady with my role with the zoning enforcement in the college area. I wouldn't say that it's any busier than normal for this time of year, although temporarily I left the zoning department to help with some staffing levels in other departments. So I actually missed really the heart of move-in time for this semester. But I was back near the end of September and things have been flowing pretty well. Not so much with respect to housing issues, although over the last couple of weeks I've gotten a few more, but things are pretty steady, not necessarily any busier than normal with respect to housing complaints.
All right, I'm interested in hearing that. I was wondering if your workload would be reduced as a result of having fewer students in the area.
One thing that I have found is that a lot of the complaints that I've been receiving haven't actually resulted in there being any violations. People have been complaining because they assume that there's more people living in a particular house than should be permitted. But when I go and do my investigation, it's just because people aren't working or maybe aren't going to the college or they have online courses or whatever, they are really just congregating at one specific house. and hanging out with their friends. When they actually have other permanent residences, they will go back to, maybe not every night, but they don't actually live at that particular property. So I found that happens from time to time before, but recently I've been finding that circumstance more often.
That's interesting. I think as the counselor, I do think that people have more time on their hands, and if they have more time on their hands, one of the things that they do is they complain more.
That's true.
I certainly get. I think my number of calls and emails have increased significantly. All right, Ryan, anything from BHA?
Not so much at the moment. We've kind of had a bit of a stall in our process for our plans for this year, obviously, and we've actually had a few members leave. So we're at this point trying to regenerate some new blood and get some more enthusiasm in helping our community right now.
Okay. Just one comment that I would make. BHA was quite instrumental in organizing kind of just a social connection between community members and students. And my wife and I, we did connect with two of them, and one of them has since got a job and moved to Toronto, so we've kind of lost track of him. But the other one is just a great guy, and I think we've benefited from getting to know him, and he's benefited as well. So that's certainly something that's very positive, I think. I don't know how large the uptake was, but I think from an initial little pilot, I think it for us anyway, it was very positive. All right, Jeff Sharp, anything from you?
Sorry about that. Just got an emergency trying to get staff to run around. As far as updates, our speed cushions are out for the summer, or for the season, I should say. Got some speed board data for you as far as Ward 1, how that went. We had speed boards installed. We had 3 speed boards installed within Ward 1 from July to October, and we had one on Steele Street in front of St. Monica's. I'm happy to report the average speed was only like 37 kilometers an hour, with so 85% of the cars were traveling less than 47 kilometers an hour, which is good. Those are numbers that we're happy with, and I hope you are too. We had another board on Johnson Street near Dunsmore. Again, average speed was below 50, and 85% of the cars were traveling 55 kilometers an hour. So anytime we see an 85th percentile less than 10 kilometers over the posted, we are happy. It's kind of industry standard is pretty acceptable to see an 85th percentile speed below 10K over the posted limit. So the other board we had was Shanty Bay coming into town. And again, average speed was well below 50, and the 85th percentile speed was hovering around 55. So again, not bad. Obviously, with COVID, traffic patterns are a little less. There's not as many people driving, so that could be reflected in our speed data. But so that's that. We have another one. We just move them around. We move them every 3 to 4 months with our contractor, and we have one installed now on Blake Street, closer to St. Vincent. It's not fully operational yet. It's brand new, and we're working with our contractor or supplier to get that up and running. I'm just having some communication problems with it. Bike lanes went in on Georgian Drive from Johnson to Penetang. Wishing Road there in the summer with a resurfacing contract, so that's good. They put some enhanced pedestrian crossings on at the signal there, Penetang and Johnson as well. Penetang and Georgian, and some push buttons and landing pads for PEDs for active transportation. We have a memo coming forward with regards to your motion, Councilor Rietma, for pedestrian facilities at Blake and Rodney, and again lake just east of Johnson. So that will be coming within the next few weeks back to council with our, I think we're coming back in the form of a memo. Pedestrian volumes were rather low and didn't warrant any enhanced pedestrian facility. That being said, recognizing COVID, it's going to be kept on the radar to continue to monitor. And hopefully in the spring of 2021, we can get out there again and get some true data. As you know, we rely on true data. So if we don't have the PEDs, we can't recommend. So we'd love to recommend it, but we'll recount it in the spring for you. I think that's about it. Quiet summer as far as, well, not quiet as far as complaints. Like you said, everybody's complaining and we're running around like crazy. So.
Yeah, I guess one other thing is that you're working on bicycle lanes on Johnson, right from the lake
Correct.
all the way up to Georgian, right?
Yeah, so that's, I believe, in 2021, Brett Greatrix in Development Services is actively working on that. So that'll be good. It's relatively cost effective. We already have, I think, close to 11 meters of road. So it's essentially prohibiting parking and then painting some bike lanes and signing it and enhancing it with symbols. So it'd be good.
Jeff, when do you know when Bell Farm is going to be done? I know it got deferred. Is it just 1 year or was it more than 1 year?
To be honest with you, I am not too sure. I thought it was only 1 year, but I mean, that capital plan changes year to year. So
yeah, it was deferred for 1 year. So hopefully next year we'll get it going. Let's just see what the financial situation looks like. But certainly Bell Farm could use it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe one other quick while I've got
Sure.
Jeff here. Recently been hearing a lot of complaints about parking issues at Burnick and Duckworth because of the ongoing parking lot reconstruction on Duckworth. Have you guys given any thought to maybe like banning parking on one side of the street, or has that been discussed or thought about?
This is the apartment building you're talking about? Yeah. So I had conversations, the weeks meld together. I'm not sure if it was early this week. I think it was late last week, or it might have been Monday. We had some recommendations back to the property management company to only permit parking on the north side of Duckworth to alleviate the congestion pinch points, impact to traffic overall. And I also made the recommendation to have people park 10, 15 meters outside of the access on the north side. I think it's to Burnick. We had some complaints with some sightline issues. I only received, I think, one complaint that came through CityWorks, but I think maybe Jason Forgraves received a few more. So yeah, we've made some recommendations towards property management. Well, not recommendations, we've told them they can't park on the south side. So yeah, hopefully that addresses the concerns.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was. It seems to have worked most of the summer, but as the summer wore on, I think it got a bit more congested there.
And they were, I forget the dates it was originally supposed to be completed, but they've had some problems. Like I think they're running into more and more repairs, and I think we've given them till the end of November. Technically, after December 1st, they can't be on the road overnight, so they're gonna excuse me, have to have some sort of have them back on the properties.
Yeah, that's for sure. So the end of November is certainly the drop dead date there, and we'll just have to see. It's just a challenge, right? Because there's no street parking around there, and they have to fix the garage. So
yeah, and the property, to the benefit of the property management, they've been very helpful and very informing their residents. So I mean, they want to stay happy customers, or we want them to be happy, and they want to keep us happy. So they've been working well with us so far.
Good. All right, Carrie, anything from you?
Thank you very much, sir. The only thing I would like to ask is if when you're bringing the international students or the quarantining people in, if Barrie Fire could get a list of the addresses where they're quarantining, I know the police get it through the Quarantine Act, and their goal is to keep them in the building, but we need evacuation plans for if there's a problem in the building. So they need to be outside the building in an emergency. They may not have time to grab their masks. And if our staff could know that this group of people needs to be kept separate from the public who tend to move freely on the outsides of a fire emergency, we would know that we need to quarantine a certain number of people or limit the area that a certain number of people could be in. That would be appreciated. We can put an end date on our computer-aided dispatch to know that 123 Main Street is in quarantine until October 25th. That would be very useful for our staff, if that's possible.
Is that something, Brian, that the college can, or Kelly, the college can accommodate?
Yeah, Brian was having internet connectivities again, so I'm not sure if he was able to reconnect, but we could certainly look at that. The good news is that if the majority of the students that are coming into the Barrie location would be quarantining in specific Barrie hotels or residents, so that should be fairly easy to facilitate. It's the ones that are doing private quarantines that are a little more complex, but we, just based on what we've seen is trending from the fall, the majority of the students that are choosing the private quarantines are not actually quarantining in Barrie. They're choosing to quarantine with family in other locations in the GTA. So we could certainly look at, you know, anything that's reported from the Barrie's perspective, sharing out some of that information.
That would be great. Thank you.
Good. All right. Any other items that we ought to discuss? I know I've kind of scrambled the agenda, but I don't think, I certainly haven't heard anything about smoking, and I suspect that given COVID, that's one of the benefits of COVID. And orientation, of course, isn't happening. Any other items that anybody wants to ask or talk about? Judy.
Hello, everyone. Hooray, okay. Finally back in.
In the flesh.
Yes, outside, because anyways, long story. It's nice to see, I really just wanted to see everybody again. It's been a long time since we've gathered. I know this isn't something that we can really do so much about, neither can the college or the city, but you know, I did want to mention that we're going into the cold time of the year. We talked about this last year, and like November, at least in my opinion, is like the worst month of the year. It's cold and dark and terrible. And then there are, as I think it was Kelly or Brian were explaining how many students will be coming in actually for the January term. And I mean, if I was coming to Barrie as a student in person, like, it couldn't be less welcoming than it is right now. And that's no fault of anything other than COVID-19. But I just wanted to maybe put it on the radar out for discussion that, you know, for people we want to feel welcome, or also like avoiding and mitigating the normal factors of winter, depression, culture shock, things that they go through alone. But also we want to retain a lot of the students who are coming and not lose them to other cities. And I don't know, I've been thinking like through this time, I mean, at least I've seen a lot of students outside in the college area in the summertime, but I don't know if that's going to be the case in the winter months. And I think it's worth the Town and Gown Committee addressing social isolation, and just even if there's no orientation, having some kind of intentional outreach or welcome that says, we know this sucks, but we're happy you're here anyways, and spending the money and taking the risk to come and be in our city, even though you can't really do anything here. So I don't know, I didn't have any solutions to that, but I don't know if anybody else has been thinking that, or maybe we could talk about it, given that we only meet once a month, and then it'll be the beginning of December and then January when a lot of new students are coming. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there for any response or conversation, and to know maybe what Georgian College might have been doing to work towards this already.
I think that's an excellent suggestion, Judy. And certainly, I think what we should do is probably put that on our agenda for next month, and have a wholesome discussion about it. But I'm just wondering whether Kelly or Brian wanted to respond to that a minute.
Hi, it's Kelly. Judy, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. If you could be the group could be participating in some of the stuff that we're already doing, because we are worried about the socialization aspect, because many of our students coming from other countries, socialization is very important to them. And so coming to Canada, and then staying in quarantine for 14 days and not having any connectivity was really important. So in the International Center, we are hosting 3 times a week on Instagram and or Facebook live chat sessions that we're encouraging all our students to kind of connect with us, as well as I know Brian's team is also doing health and wellness live chats as well. So I think, maybe we can, as a start, suggest maybe some of the committee members come in and join those live sessions and introduce yourself to the students and offer some connectivity that way. But certainly open to anything that the group feels we could do to support the students, because I think you're absolutely right. And that was one of the final updates that I was going to give outside of living and breathing the whole quarantine stuff that's happening right now, is that we have seen a significant increase in our students and staff members who have cultural differences to the Canadian population, really identifying that COVID has exacerbated some of the the commentary directed and actions directed towards them. And so our team shifted, and we're happy that there hasn't been a lot of housing complaints per se, but there has been a dramatic increase of other complaints, and we've shifted our some of our focus to supporting cultural understanding and awareness and appreciation. And I think that's where we need to really spend some time and energy in the coming months to make sure that our students do feel like this is a welcoming community.
Claire,
Yes.
do you think there might be some opportunity for Town and Gown to work with Access Barrie and maybe the college to work on a communications initiative around exactly those subjects? Because I think I think it's not only COVID, I think it's also the state of things south of the border, the election next week. I mean, I'm dealing with a lot of that type of stuff in my work life. So I can only imagine what it's like to be an international student walking the streets of Barrie.
Yeah. I can certainly explore that with Access Barrie, and I'll get back to the committee on it next time that we get together. The other thought that I was having as a result of Judy's comments was, I wonder whether how much these international students are connected to the library, because the library has a lot of resources. And it may be that it would be helpful for the library to be connected to some of these chats that you're having, just so that students know what kind of resources are available right there anyway.
Yeah, Councillor Ruth, that's a great point. And I do know Judy has been working very closely with Kenta and our team to support the students. And so I do believe that she's been a part of one of our chats in the earlier days, but absolutely we should be continuing these types of conversations.
Yes, thank you. And Claire, I'm glad that you brought up the library too, because I was thinking during this conversation that the library does need to be doing a better job of reaching out more particularly to the students, or maybe even focusing on a time frame like January intake to have kind of that fresh start. But the truth is the library is like intentionally not trying to welcome people in, especially in groups. We can't gather in more than groups of 3 at this point. So it would be counterproductive and discouraging to be encouraging people to come and use the library. So that's why we really haven't done anything, but there's so much that we've been doing online, including English Conversation Circle has been continuing regularly online. But it'd be nice to do something more intentionally with outreach to the college. So I'd love to talk maybe next month, or specifically I might follow up with Kelly and Brian about library interaction involvement. And I wouldn't be the person doing it. It would be Maria, who is our librarian who works with community and specifically newcomers. But yes, thank you for raising the point about the library. We do need to do a better job of that outreach too.
All right, that's great. I mean, that's what the purpose of this committee is all about, is to try to make some of these connections back and forth. Any other discussions, questions, or things that we ought to talk about? Nothing on your heart?
I'll just mention one thing, Councillor Rietma.
Sure.
Myself and Samantha Hoffman from Barrie Fire and Kenta have been kind of collaborating on a social media safe housing campaign from Georgian College. It's by no means finalized yet, but maybe something to keep on the radar for future meetings. I'm sure that Kenta will let us know when that's at a bit more of a stage where he wants to present it to us. But essentially, it's a strategic social media campaign for information to specifically international students who are coming and looking for housing, what to look for, and specific links to landlord tenant information, fire safety information, and Georgian College's information as well.
That's a great initiative. And yeah, do you think you'll have that ready for us by next month, or is that too ambitious?
I can circle back with Kenta. We did have to put some of our activities on hold because the focus had to shift to this quarantine project. It was a massive project, but I can circle back with him just to make sure that it's in line to present next month.
Sure. And I mean, maybe you can let Tammy know whether it's something we should talk about next month or not. Okay.
Perfect. Will do. Thanks.
Anything else, folks? All right. Well, then what we'll do is we'll adjourn the meeting, but it's been really great to connect with each one of you again. It's been such a long time, and it's really great. And I think we, you know, I really appreciate this committee, because I think it's those little cross connections that are going to make our community a whole lot better. And so I appreciate each one of your involvement in that. So thanks very much. And with that, I guess we're finished. See you in a month.